series, Resurrection is Real. Let's talk about it. Jesus, coffee. So yesterday we talked about the resurrection and the robbery. All of the thoughts of it, the body was robbed. This morning we're going to talk about how it's real. Passage I want to go over, this is probably one of my favorite passages. Good morning, Eddie. Talking about the resurrection. Actually comes out of Luke 23. And actually beginning Luke 24. And I love this. There's a song by Phil Wickham called Sunday is Coming. And I'm going to post it in the comments. Good morning, Christina. There's a passage, or there's a line in that song that's just powerful. And it comes from this verse. So I'm just going to go into Luke 24, start at verse 1. So now on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they and certain other women, so we know that from what we talked about yesterday, that it was Mary and Mary Magdalene, came to the tomb bringing the spices which they had prepared because they wanted to finish burying Jesus. But they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. Then they went in and did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. And it happened as they were greatly perplexed about this, that behold, two men stood by them in shining garments. Then as they were afraid, bowed their faces to the earth, they said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here, but he is risen. Remember how he spoke to you when he said in Galilee, saying, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and the third day rise again. Why do you seek the living among the dead?" I love that line. That's probably, of the resurrection stories in the gospel, Luke, I love his take on that. Why do you seek the living among the dead? So, why is the resurrection real? What makes the resurrection real? Well, first of all, let's talk about prior conduct. And what do I mean by prior conduct? Well, if somebody goes to court for, good morning, 6. Somebody goes to court for, anger. They go to court for violence. What's the jury, what are they going to try and show the jury? They're going to try and show the jury that there's a history of conduct. Well, he was violent here, he was violent here, he was violent here. They're going to show that there's a trend, right? Because if somebody just out of the blue is radically violent, that tells you that that's not normal. So prior conduct. Well, there's 3 situations of prior conduct here, and I'm gonna link the passages in the comments. I'm not going to read through all 3 sets of the passages. I'm just going to kind of just from Luke 7, verses 11 through 16. Jesus walks up to a funeral procession of a widow who was getting ready to bury her son. So he walks up and, has compassion for the woman, sees the woman is just hurting, walks up and puts his hand on which was essentially back then a casket, puts his hand on it and tells him to arise. And which seems cruel, right? Because, wait a minute, he's dead. It's cruel that you're giving this woman any hope. And her son sits up and begins speaking. And he gives her back to his mother. So, right there, he's resurrected. So we go to a synagogue official. So a high-ranking synagogue official had gone and sought Jesus out. And this takes place again in Luke. This time it's Luke 8. He seeks Jesus out as Jesus is teaching. And he begs Jesus to come back to the house. And this is actually played out. If you guys have watched The Chosen, this actually gets played out in The Chosen. And they get back there. Well, as they get back there, the one of the men, one of the other synagogue official who's familiar with these gentleman's daughter, says there's no need to bother the teacher anymore. Your daughter has died. Good morning, Ron. She's no longer sleeping. Now she's died. So Jesus says, come on, let's go. He takes two of his disciples, takes two of his apostles and the father in with her and says that she's not dead, she's just sleeping. Well, they kind of mock and jeer him because they know she's dead, right? And he looks at her and says, daughter, arise. And up she sits and wakes up. And Jesus tells her, get her food. She was just sick, even though she was dead. So he performs another resurrection. And the most famous one that everybody knows about is the story of Lazarus, who was actually Jesus' friend. And this actually comes out of John 11. And from this comes, just so you guys know, the shortest verse in the Bible, which is actually 2 words. Jesus wept. Just in case anybody ever wants to do any, trivia with it, shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept. So why did Jesus weep? Jesus certainly didn't weep because he knew that Lazarus was going to die. I mean, he knew that Lazarus was going to die. He knew Lazarus was sick and could have saved Lazarus, but it wouldn't have brought the kingdom any glory. So he goes to Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, and great conversation between the two of them, and Jesus did weep in compassion for his sisters, for Lazarus' sisters, as they were greatly distraught over the fact that their brother had passed. So Jesus goes to the tomb with them and says, roll the stone away. Well, sister's like, he's been in there 4 days. There's going to be stench. We're going to roll that away and we're going to get a nose full of ugly. So Jesus said, roll the stone away. So they rolled the stone away from the opening of the tomb and told Lazarus to arise, come. Out comes Lazarus, bound by hands and feet, and he said, loose him. Out comes Lazarus. So 3 different times Jesus had performed resurrections. And what did Jesus say to the Pharisees? You destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll rebuild it. Meaning you destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll rebuild it. Meaning his body. And they knew that, and that was what we talked about yesterday, saying he said in 3 days he'll resurrect himself, and that's why we need to guard that tomb for 3 days. So let's look at the eyewitness records, because we know that there's definite prior conduct, right? He resurrected 3 other people. Let's look at the eyewitness records, because people say, well, no. I mean, there was over 500 people that gave testimony to seeing the risen Jesus. So you're not talking about 1 or 2 people, 3 people. You're talking about over 500 people gave testimony to seeing the risen Jesus. How many others saw him but didn't give testimony to it? And these occurrences happened over a 40-day period. We know that between the resurrection and the ascension, which is what's known as Pentecost, we know that that was a 40-day period, because 40 days after Easter we have Pentecost, which is the resurrection, or which is the ascension. And it spread over 90 miles. These occurrences happen in an array of group sizes. So it wasn't one large group. It was either personal one-on-one interactions, small groups, maybe 3, 4, 5, to large groups, maybe 20, 30, 40. So happen in an array of sizes. And yesterday we talked about the unwavering commitment of the apostles to talk about the resurrection and how it cost them their lives. I mean, they were martyred for talking about the resurrection and sharing about the resurrection of Jesus. So, their certainty resulted in a new expression of great courage. And that's courage that you and I, as believers, need to take to go out and share the gospel with those that don't know about the story of the gospel. Being how Jesus took on flesh, stepped down from eternity, stepped from outside of time, space, and matter to step into time, take on flesh, so that he can dwell among us and walk in his creation. And walk out the perfect life. Remember, guys, you've heard me mention this before, that Jesus walked the life that we were intended to walk. That's what man should have looked like had the garden never happened. Jesus walked that out. So that's what things will look like in heaven when there's no more sin. Walking that life. And that's the life we should strive to walk every day. Strive to walk the life he walked. Are we going to sin? Yes, we're going to sin. Do we have to like our sin? No, we don't have to like our sin. Should we willingly sin? No, we shouldn't willingly sin. It's not what Jesus did. He didn't willingly sin. Because if he sinned, then if he sinned one time, then he couldn't have been the propitiation or the satisfaction of God's wrath for us. He couldn't have been that substitutionary death on our behalf. That's why we place our faith in him, because we know that he walked that life, and we know that he paid that penalty, and we know that he did that for us. So, his resurrection was real, guys. There's a great movie called Case for Christ, in which Lee Strobel, a reporter from the Chicago Tribune, actually goes after trying to disprove Christ. He goes after the resurrection of Jesus, and it couldn't be disproved. Matter of fact, there's a great apologist who said, I'd rather you not question my faith, but question the resurrection of Jesus, because everybody who questions the resurrection of Jesus finds their faith. Because you can't, and people say, well, yeah, it's in the book, but it's, the book's a story, it's a fairy tale. No, it's not. The book is factual. Matter of fact, you know, archaeologists use the Bible when they've in fact found civilizations and people and towns and cities that were said they didn't even know existed. They went in and used the Bible, and where they said there were cities and where they said that there was all of these evidences from here, they go out and they dig them up, and guess what they find? People, cities. Matter of fact, they've recently started to uncover the remains of Sodom and Gomorrah. And they're finding all of the sulfur from all of the hellfire that was rained down from heaven on Sodom and Gomorrah. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah for everything Sodom and Gomorrah was all about, which was sexual immorality. So, yep. So, I love you guys. I know he loves you like crazy. He is risen. His resurrection is real. It's just unwavering. There's indisputable, really. You know, you can see from all of the things that he did. He had resurrected many people, resurrected 3 people, and he said that he would, in 3 days, he would resurrect the temple, and he did resurrect the temple, and he's alive. He is the living triune God. He is the true God. Triune, 3, tri meaning 3, un, unity meaning 1. So when we say triune, that's what we're talking about, is 3, tri, un, unity, 1. When you're united, you're 1, right? Well, that's what triune comes from. 3 in 1. 3 people, 1 being. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. 1 being. And there's 1 God. He's the Godhead. So, we'll be back tomorrow, guys, with whatever Dad wants to talk about. I have no idea. So, I love you guys. He loves you like crazy. We'll be back tomorrow.